People don't lose respect for you because you say the wrong thing. They lose respect because you say too much. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. At first, no one notices it, not even you. You think you're being clear. You think you're being helpful. You think more words will make your point stronger. They don't. They make it weaker. Respect doesn't disappear when you make mistakes. It fades when your presence loses weight. And nothing makes presence lighter than unnecessary words. The moment you start filling every silence, you change the dynamic. You stop leading the interaction and start managing reactions. People don't consciously think, "He talks too much, I should respect him less." They feel something more subtle. They feel that your words are optional, that they don't need to listen carefully, that you'll repeat yourself anyway, that you'll explain again if they push back. And once people feel that, respect begins to erode. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you lack restraint. Strong presence doesn't need constant clarification. Weak presence does. The more you talk, the more you signal one thing. That silence makes you uncomfortable. And when silence makes you uncomfortable, people sense uncertainty. This is why truly respected individuals speak less. Not because they have less to say, but because they don't need to prove it. They don't rush to fill gaps. They don't chase understanding. They don't correct every interpretation. They let their words land and allow silence to do part of the work. Talking too much feels safe. Silence feels risky. So most people choose words and slowly lose respect. Over time, the signs become obvious, if you know what to look for. People interrupt you more. They start multitasking while you speak. They nod, but don't follow. Your explanations get longer. Their attention gets shorter. And the gap between those two things is where respect dies. The irony is this: the more you try to be understood, the less authoritative you appear. Because authority is not built by volume. It's built by control. Control over timing. Control over response. Control over yourself. This video isn't about becoming silent. It's about removing the habits that quietly teach people they don't have to take your words seriously. In the next part, we'll break down the first reason people talk too much, and why it has nothing to do with confidence and everything to do with internal tension. Most people think they talk too much because they're confident, because they're expressive, because they have a lot to say. That's not the reason. People talk too much because of internal pressure. Pressure to be understood. Pressure to be accepted. Pressure to avoid tension. Talking becomes a release. Silence feels heavy, so they break it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Talking too much is not confidence. It's tension management. When you're truly confident, you don't rush to clarify yourself. You don't feel the need to make sure everyone agrees. You don't need instant validation. You can say one sentence and let it stand. People who talk too much are often intelligent. They think fast. They see multiple angles. So when silence appears, their mind keeps working. They add context. They add explanations. They add reasons. Not because the listener needs them, but because they do. This is where respect starts to slip. Because every added explanation subtly communicates, "I'm not sure this is enough on its own." And people pick up on that immediately. They don't hear uncertainty in your words. They feel it in your behavior. The need to keep going, the inability to stop. Strong presence is comfortable with unfinished space. Weak presence tries to fill it. This is why silence is such a powerful signal. Silence says, "I don't need to convince you. I trust my position. I'm settled." Talking too much says the opposite, even when your words are correct. Another mistake people make is confusing clarity with volume. Clarity doesn't come from more words, it comes from precision. The most respected people don't speak at length. They speak deliberately. They remove unnecessary sentences. They cut explanations short. They stop before they feel fully done. And that restraint creates weight. Think about it. When someone keeps talking, you assume there's more coming. When someone stops early, you lean in. Because your mind stays engaged, respect follows attention. Attention follows restraint. In the next part, we'll look at what actually happens in conversations when you talk less, and why people start listening differently almost immediately. When you start talking less, something subtle but powerful happens. The room changes, not because people suddenly respect you more, but because they start adjusting to you. At first, it feels uncomfortable. For you, you stop mid-thought. You leave sentences shorter than usual. You don't explain everything to the end. And there's silence. That silence feels risky, like you should fill it, like you're losing control. But you're not. You're shifting it. People are used to you continuing. They expect more context, more explanation, more reassurance. When it doesn't come, their brain reacts. They lean in, they pay attention, they start processing what you already said, because now your words are limited, and limited things feel valuable. Talking less changes the power balance in a conversation. The one who talks more is usually the one carrying the interaction. The one who talks less sets the pace. This is why interrogations work the way they do, why negotiations favor the quieter side, why respected leaders pause before answering. Silence creates pressure, but not on you, on them. When you stop explaining, others start filling the gap. They ask better questions, they reveal more, they expose their position. You learn more by saying less than you ever did by explaining more. Another shift happens too. Interruptions decrease. People interrupt those who don't mind being interrupted. When you speak briefly and stop, interrupting feels rude. When you keep going, interrupting feels necessary. Talking less teaches people how to treat your words. Short statements feel final. Long explanations feel negotiable. And people negotiate what feels negotiable. This is why reducing words often increases influence almost immediately. Not because you became dominant, but because you became clear. Clarity doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. In the final part, we'll bring this together. How to speak less without becoming distant, and how to use restraint without turning into silence. Talking less is not about silence. It's about intent. It's about knowing why you speak before you open your mouth. Most people talk until they feel relief. They speak to release tension, to feel understood, to avoid discomfort. Respected people do the opposite. They speak with purpose and stop before the words lose weight. This is the part most people misunderstand. They think, if I talk less, people will forget me. If I don't explain, I'll be misunderstood. If I stay quiet, I'll lose influence. The truth is harsher. If your influence disappears when you stop talking, it was never influence. It was noise. Real respect doesn't need constant maintenance. It doesn't need reminders. It doesn't need repetition. It's felt, even in silence. When you reduce unnecessary speech, you create space. And space changes behavior. People slow down around you. They choose their words more carefully. They pay attention to tone, timing, and meaning. Because now your words are limited. And limited things carry value. This is why restraint feels uncomfortable at first. You're breaking a habit. The habit of filling gaps. The habit of explaining before being asked. The habit of proving your point instead of standing by it. At first, silence feels like weakness. But that's only because you're used to control coming from words. Real control comes from containment, from not reacting immediately, from not answering every question, from letting others sit with what you've already said. When you stop talking early, others finish the thought for you. Sometimes correctly, sometimes not, and that's fine. Because authority doesn't require perfect understanding, it requires stability. People respect those who remain steady even when they're misunderstood. Especially then. This doesn't mean becoming distant or cold. It means becoming deliberate. You still speak, but only when it adds weight. You still explain, but only once. You still engage, but without chasing agreement. Over time, something shifts. People stop interrupting. They stop pushing back reflexively. They stop testing every statement. Not because you became dominant, but because you became predictable. And predictability creates trust. Trust creates respect. The strongest presence in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one that doesn't rush, doesn't repeat, doesn't compete for attention. It speaks and lets the silence do the rest. That's when people listen. Not because they have to, but because they don't want to miss what you'll say next.